once you get in, you know, learn and sit in every meeting that you can. I think that's how I was able to kind of craft the skills, is by sitting with a seasoned agency owner in a sales meeting, not once, not twice, dozens and dozens and dozens of times. But make sure you're listening, not just to the questions being asked, but listen to the responses.
Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander.
So today on the show, I'm very excited to welcome John Caruso. We're trying to get back into the habit of getting back to our roots, having actual practitioners and operators on, either among agency owners or in this case, business development leaders from across these great states and even Canada. So for the last 10 years, John has helped foster new relationships and work in client services in the advertising industry, partnering with clients in a variety of industries, including financial, healthcare, CPG, to provide strategic planning, brand strategy, and a variety of other advertising solutions. He's director of BD at Vendillii for the past, I think, 6 years, if I have that right, John. And excited to dig into things. So I guess to give you the mic, I'd love to learn, how did you get involved in this wild world of agency biz dev?
Yeah, thanks first off for having me. Excited to talk about this. I think agency BD doesn't get talked about enough. It's a very interesting space, so appreciate it. Yeah, fun story how I got started. Obviously studied marketing in college, graduated with a BS of management and marketing. Tail end of the recession, and it was kind of one of those times where most people I knew ended up working a job that was not in the area of, expertise or study that they wanted to pursue. I did a quick stint in logistics, found out I really didn't care for that. Left and said, I'll wait tables or whatever until I find what I want. Got a quick little in with a small ad agency in the Lawrenceville section of Pittsburgh called Alisco's Creative Cafe. They had a business development role. I said, I can cold call people. They said, great. I think the first day I booked a meeting with a company, kind of one of those things of like, oh, I must be good at this. Spent 7 years there. They were more of a traditional firm, so a lot of focus on branding, more traditional outdoor stuff like that. And then in a business downturn, I had left, Alisco, and kind of was on the market when Chris, our owner, had reached out and was like, are you open? Would you consider coming over to work with me? Formerly, our agency was known as Pro From Go Internet Marketing. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. Don't have much else going on right now. And I started, like you said, 6 years ago. It was a little bit of a transition, moving from traditional to digital. So there was quite a learning curve there. Chris is a great teacher. And you also just have to be good about being baptized in fire and picking up on it as you go. So.
Yeah, there's lots to dig into there. And a little sidebar, I think that it's rare for me now to encounter somebody that's in a career that they trained for traditionally in college. I was a history major, and it's like I actually do find myself using that muscle in kind of roundabout ways, and just kind of I always think historically and sometimes to a detriment, because I could go too deep with it. But it's helped me, I think, contextualize a lot of stuff that's going on and maybe take a step back from it. But digressing a little bit, I guess kind of getting to what you're up to now, would you mind kind of taking us through a day in the life in BD? Because I think a lot of people listening are balancing biz dev with other stuff, or they're thinking about that biz dev hire like yourself. And I'd love to hear how have you kind of structured your day?
Sure. So, that's a really interesting question. And I think, as everyone that's probably listening to this knows, you're probably wearing a lot of different hats. When I started with Chris's team back in 2019, I think we were a team of 7, so a lot smaller. We're 16 now. Any agency at that size, everyone's going to hop in and do a bunch of different things. And to your point, yes, business development is one of the most important. How do you grow, right? So Chris brought me on to kind of field more, inbound opportunities, and then kind of direct some marketing stuff while he was able to then focus on the business. What are we going to do strategically? And this, I'll kind of rope this all back together at the end. As far as day in the life, every day looks different. The day you plan for is never the day that you actually get. Especially in my seat, I never know when the phone's going to ring with an existing client that has a need, a net new client that wants to have a conversation. You're always kind of jumping back and forth. On top of it, really what I focus on doing is you have this set kind of, meetings that have been booked through inbound leads, referral partners, etc. So those are always on the agenda. But then, being tactical about the time in between those, it's very difficult, but I try to just block out, time to say, if I pull up Google Maps and I want to search for a manufacturer in a certain area, let's just see if any of them are a good fit. Do any of them have a bad website that maybe, I could talk to them and say, you opened some improvement here. I put them in HubSpot, build a lead, reach out to them later, whatever that might be. The meetings trap, that's another part of the everyday that I think we all fall into, especially now with, video so prevalent. Really making sure that you're in meetings that matter, and then also saying no to the ones that maybe don't. I think our agency has learned over the years too that the sales folks sometimes get stuck with the client that they just brought on. The client likes you, they want you to be involved. You kind of stay there a little bit too long and you get kind of sucked in. Not that you don't want to help them, but you do have to detach and kind of move forward. And so our team's made a really good point to do that as well.
That's great. And with that in mind, can you talk about, like, you've been doing this for a while. What are those activities, those consistent activities that you find are most likely to drive revenue that are like your non-negotiables, if that makes sense?
It's a very, very difficult question. And I'm sure every agency out there, even us, we want the answer to that. Traditionally in our space, cold outreach is very difficult. And back to the previous agency I worked for, I did a lot of cold outreach. And at first in 2013, 14, 15, I was getting pretty decent results. Like I could count on booking 4 to 6 meetings a month with, qualified companies. As time went on, I started to just notice that law of diminishing returns. And I think it was just a culture shift. Kudos to HubSpot and the inbound marketing methodology. They identified that people don't want to purchase that way anymore. And, Chris, when I came to his team, he had invested heavily in his own, organic content, and really following that inbound model. But I really think we're in a 2.0 stage now where, obviously AI is changing things, but, people are still searching for, they're becoming those inbound opportunities, but I feel like that's becoming less and less. They're using AI to maybe make a list of good potential folks to reach out to. But I think a lot of folks are then taking that to, a peer or another marketer and saying, like, have you worked with these guys? Who's good? Who's not? So really getting on the short list is the key. Have we cracked the code as far as how to do that repeatedly and on demand? No. But we're working on that every day.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's a good jumping off point, because I think we saw the same thing, and we were very much party to it because we were helping agencies with cold outreach for years, and started to see it basically produce diminishing returns regardless of how sophisticated you got with it. And I think that there's some people that are making it work, but usually they're working at like a more mass outreach kind of SMB level where like they can afford to play this numbers game that most of us can't afford to play, and so on. So I guess but that said, like, I think warm outreach still works really, really well. Like a lot of like my non-negotiables have become doing warm outreach, sometimes 1-to-1, sometimes a little more automated depending on the situation, to people that I already have an existing relationship with. Because I've talked to agency owners that have tried to do cold outreach 1-to-1, right? Tried to do it really tastefully. I'm gonna go research this company, this person, put all this stuff together, and still, like, the AI has gotten so good that everyone's so skeptical, so they just assume it was spam, even when it's not. So anyway, I'd love to bring that back to what you were saying, because you said something interesting, which is like about getting on these short lists, about maybe being part of these communities. A lot of it, like in the agency world, is happening over like Slack communities and stuff. I'm sure in healthcare and finance, it's not Slack, it's probably something else. But what does that look like for you guys? Like, what steps have you guys taken to try to get involved in these sort of spaces?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as a HubSpot partner, we are pretty involved there. I wouldn't say we generate a whole lot of net new opportunities through those groups. That's more of a sounding board or a resource, like, hey, I need someone that does something we don't. As far as lead gen, digitally, I think video content, why I wanted to join this. It's just a great way to talk and people hear your perception or thoughts on things. That's great. We try to do it internally. Two of our team members sit down, BS about a topic that we find interesting or something that's new or happening in the space. And we just, use that content, which is very interesting. Some people like to listen to it. But yeah, really the focus, back to your point, is, identifying folks, seeing if they are connected with someone that you're interested in connecting with, asking for that introduction or that referral. That's a great way to do it. I think the other day in the life point that I didn't kind of mention, and this isn't every day, but more and more of my weeks I've been spending networking after work. And the importance of that has gone through the roof, because people meet your authentic self out in the wild, ask you what you do, and then before you know it, 2 or 3 months go by, you get an email that says, "Hey, I remember you reached out or we talked. It's time."
Yeah. That's great. Why do you think that is? Like, why is that risen in importance, that sort of in-person networking?
2 reasons. I mean, number one, our added use of digital through the pandemic, through just everyday life. We're getting tired of it as people, I think. I think as human beings, we're looking for any excuse to, number one, connect like we used to. And what I'd mentioned before, like, you really get a better authentic picture of someone. It's not a sales conversation at first. It's oh, well, what do you like to do? Or what have you been up to? You get so much more rapport building in those types of connections than, hey, we booked a Zoom call with you. It's less rigid, yes.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up, because it's something that I struggle with a lot, where it's like, on one hand, I think that I feel a lot of what other people feel, like the isolation of everything being digital and the lack of authenticity, and then just like the AI slop and everything that we're all dealing with now. And then on the other hand, it's like, I got to go into the city. I've got to get on the subway. I've got a 2-year-old. I've got a dog that needs to be walked. I've got all these other projects that, I could be creating content that goes out to hundreds of people maybe or more in the time it takes me to do that. So it's like just this back and forth is like, is it worth the friction? And maybe, obviously everyone's different. Maybe for a lot of people, it's getting on a plane even, or going to a trade show. So I don't know if there's an easy answer, but I'd love to hear, like, how is there anything you've done to justify or to figure out, like, when is it worth the friction? When is it worth the psychological benefit of getting out there versus not?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And since we spend so much time doing it in various different groups, we kind of have an answer, or at least a recipe that we like. The first thing I'll tell anyone that is, hiring someone to do that or doing it themselves is it takes time. You have to invest a lot of time in those groups before those deals, those conversations start to happen, right? Don't expect to show up at a networking event and have 3 people say, "I need a website tomorrow." It's not going to happen. And it might, great if it does, but it probably won't. Build relationships, rapport. Every time we go, it's people we see 6-8 times a year, but we go because we just want to catch up with them. And then when they do bump across an opportunity, they send it your way. Second part, I would say making sure you're in the right rooms. You find out very quickly. You're going to have to go to know if it's a good fit from a networking perspective. But I usually know pretty quickly, this isn't the right room of people. These aren't, folks in my space. These aren't folks with budget. You just know very quickly. So I really try to focus on the ones where I am having quality conversations with quality people. Not that anyone's not quality to have a conversation with. They sure are. And you can definitely get a deal passed through anyone. But I really like those groups that are business executives, business owners. The conversations seem easier to come by. There's less education, and speed with the deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like, it's funny. I have my book, Relationship Sales and Scale, and I talk about like my early experience going to some of those groups, like, the kind of the BNIS groups. And I remember like there's a point I make that we sold kind of a niche service, right? We did like creative services for high-end animation for like tech companies and pharma and that kind of thing. And the network, and it totally could have been that back then I just wasn't that great at it, but I think it was partially that, partially like our product was just kind of niche, and like there were a lot of people that wanted to help. and couldn't. And like I remember just going to like a lot of these events, and I go to trade shows, and I go to like Javits Center, and it didn't materialize in a lot. And like what I've sort of found, and what's informed like a lot of what we've built here, is like making that same dynamic work, but for like a niche, in a niche digital way, if that makes sense. So I think that you guys are, if I remember right, focused on like healthcare and finance. How have you been able to make that work? Like, how has that impacted like your shot selection, quote unquote, when you're figuring out what events to go to, and what's your game plan kind of look like for those?
That's interesting too. Yeah, it's nuanced where, I wouldn't even say the healthcare so much. It's probably more, B2B companies, professional service companies, manufacturers, SaaS companies. We're really generalist. And it's due to, if you're good at understanding technology and marketing tactics, you can do it for any industry. A lot of people think that's not the case, but it is really true. And remind me again of your question, just so.
Yeah, kind of like, how are you deciding what events to go to, and what's your game plan when you go to those events?
Yeah, so I think the events that I identify aren't necessarily niche by industry. Some are, and it's just because those industries network better together. So it's more about just a quality event that the right people are going to be at. Like I said before, executives, owners, those are the people I want to kind of talk to, or at least get to know. Once you're there, I think the strategy is, you don't talk about business. Like it's the one thing, to your point, like you kind of learn very quickly how to get good at it. And it's not that it's like sneaky or you're trying to pull one over on anyone, but it's, people want to know that you're a person first, and they want to know if they like you. I can't remember the Vista speaker that we heard, but they're talking about the two disc profiles of either people have to like you to trust you, or people have to trust you to like you. And how you do that is be yourself. Talk to them about things completely irrelevant to business. They'll make a determination. Either they like you, they trust you. And when that happens, you'll have an opportunity for a conversation when the time comes. So it's that long game again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything that you're doing like before or after the events? I think that, a lot of people are maybe overcomplicating this, or trying to automate too much, but are there any systems that you found to work for the follow-up, or for like how to handle that follow-up, and how to kind of bring things to the next level?
I am the most probably passive with that stuff of any salesperson, where my follow-ups usually, I just wanted to say, it was very nice talking to you. If you ever need anything, let me know. They'll let you know if they need something. By saying something else, you're not going to force a new deal or an opportunity. So I'm just polite. Just be polite, be nice. Again, be human, and it will work out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think earlier you were talking about kind of sharing perspective, and that's something that I think is becoming more and more of like a table stakes sort of thing, especially like in a world of AI and globalized workforce, increased competition. Like the idea of just like, oh, we're purely hiring you to get this thing done, to shovel the coal to the fire, I think is becoming a harder like part of the market to defend. Or let me know if you disagree with that. But I'd love to hear like, how is the thought leadership, the perspective sharing coming into play? Is that you handling it, or your owner, or other people in the agency? And how are you kind of thinking about that, if it makes sense?
I think really, that's a really good question, because it is important. I think as a team, we've identified the importance of it, and we're kind of sharing the load there. So, we all have such drastic different professional expertise, right? Our designer's going to be able to speak to certain things at a different level than I am. Same with a developer or a HubSpot expert. Those unique experience lend themselves to that subject matter expertise. Now, asking the right questions, or asking questions that maybe your prospect would ask just so that they can hear the answer, is a great way to do that. The other side of it too, so, obviously everyone's looking at sales to go out and find net new. I think some of the biggest opportunities for your marketing in that thought leadership is, what has sales been asked, or what are they hearing? We do a really good job of hearing, oh, the last 6 people I talked to said they're leaving their agency because they're not proactive. I can bring that to the team and say, okay, this is an important thing that we need to ingrain in our process, which we already do anyway. But just for everyone to, again, make a point to say, okay, if we're not being proactive all the time, that's how we're going to, risk churn or lose clients. And then you can even talk about that too. So what are the different ways to be proactive? What makes your agency different? Why is proactivity different at Vendillii versus XYZ? That makes
Yeah, it does. And I think that, both call recorders and AI have been, for us anyway, have been like a complete game changer, because it's like there's always at least one post or one idea that's coming out of almost every single call I'm on, and like same with our clients. I've talked with agencies that have gotten this very streamlined and very sophisticated, where like, the biz dev person or whoever will say like, yes, this call has a nugget in it, like take the transcript and find out what it is. And of course they're anonymizing it or whatever they need to do. Whether it's that specific thing or not, is there anything like that that's come out of the last couple months or couple years? And love to hear about it.
Yeah, I think those two right there are one of the most talked about ones recently for us. Call recording and AI, and how much we'll talk about the time it saves. That's great. Love that. But I think the other benefit that I notice in my day-to-day every time is those call recorders, which we use Ask Elephant, shout out to them. We're big on that partnership, blown away. The ability for me to hop on a Zoom call with someone and not take notes has changed everything. I'm able to actually be present in the conversation. I listen better. I don't have to be, what was that? Or I'm trying to catch up while they're still talking. That is huge to me. And I think that's changed the game as far as, building, again, a better rapport with a prospect before, where I was half paying attention while I'm trying to capture the things our team needs.
Yeah, that's been really helpful for me as well. To shift gears a little bit, you mentioned kind of this idea of going after targeted intros or referrals, and I'd love to compare notes on that. I'm happy to share. So what the process we're helping clients with is often like looking at these situations where you have these relationships you just kind of forget about. You have like your happy clients, you have existing partners, you have prospects that are bought in, but the timing isn't right. And these are all, and then you just have people on the team that might have a relationship, accounts people that you forgot that was even warm, right? And it's like, so what we've been helping people do is map those connectors to the prospects that the agency wants to meet, give people options so you have all these shots on goal, as opposed to just, hey, do you know Bob? Oh, I don't know Bob. Okay, that's it. And then making it really easy for the person to help. And like, it's been our experience, hypothesis that like a lot of the time the reason the relationship doesn't happen or the referral doesn't happen is because of friction. It's because it's too much work for the other person, not just because of trust or, although that's also an ingredient that's necessary. So I'll have to compare notes on that. Like what have you found to work? Like how are you kind of thinking about nurturing referrals with clients, whoever else, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. So number one, we build a referral partner program. I think the biggest motivator in anything in this world is money. Whether that's going directly to the referral source or we give them the option, if you'd like us to donate that to a nonprofit of your choice, we'll do that as well too. Some people care, some people don't. But that's a motivator, whether people like to admit it or not. But on top of it, to your point, just asking someone, hey, can you introduce me? You better know the person you're asking pretty well, because it is awkward sometimes for them to say, yeah, I can introduce you, but it seems like you're trying to sell them something, and then that reflects poorly on me. So you have to know the person really well to do that. I think another strategy, and this comes from both agencies that I've worked at. The previous one, we actually kind of noted it as part of our strategy. We call it the Gatsby theory, that if we throw the parties, Daisy will eventually come, right? And it's kind of true in agencies as well. I know almost all in industries. My girlfriend's an attorney. They do the same thing. Like we want to have networking opportunities. We want to have parties at the office. We just want to have a good time and meet good people, and that stuff will naturally happen. So we try to do that too through referral partner get-togethers. Hey, everyone come over. We're having bourbon and cigars on the deck, or we're doing a sporting clay shoot, whatever it may be. You try to get people that have like-minded mentality and shared interests, and it just naturally kind of boils. Before you know it, they're saying, "Hey, John, you got to come over. You got to meet this guy I know." And you get an intro, and that's really how it blossoms organically, instead of that, hey, I want to force my way into all of this. Now, you have to try some, but tactfully what's going to work and what's not.
Yeah, you said a few things that I think are interesting. For one, I definitely agree that it has to be a relationship that is, well connected. I think that a lot of the times what we see though is like the agency, you'll have a client that's like, I'm happy to help you. I'm really happy right now. It's usually about 30 days after the engagement starts. Their peak happiness, right? And then it's sort of like, instead of saying, great, if you know anybody, send them our way. It's like, here are a few people that I saw you might know. Can you help me like reach them and I'll make it easy on you? We found that to work. A couple more things you said that I think were cool are like the donating to a charity of your choice is interesting, because I think a lot of the times we've seen like the referral commission partnership thing get overpitched. And it's like, there's some people that care about it once it's going, but they don't really care about it until they see the potential. And that's like, because there's a million more things on their to-do list. Like we've all been on those pitches. Hey, I'll give you this commission. And it's like, great. That's like, line item number 100 on the things that I have that could make my business more profitable. Another thing that you said is like, I really like the party idea, because it's like, it just reminds me of how the agency business was always like, it used to be like the fun sector of the B2B economy, right? Like, I mean, yeah, we can get to Mad Men and there's all this stuff that's problematic with that era, but like there was something fun and dynamic about that. And I feel like it's been lost a lot to like over measuring everything. So anyway, I don't have a good question, but those are a few random thoughts.
I agree with that. And, I think you see it through a multitude of places. I'm also on the board of directors for the AdFed of Pittsburgh, as our membership chair. And I think you see it even with, opportunities to network between agencies anymore. That's down. I think young people at those events, that's down. When I was 23 to 25, like there was a group of folks that went to this event called Juice. It was monthly, every one of the Thursdays. It was just a happy hour. And there'd be a group of 30 young pros from all these different agencies just hanging out. And like, you get to meet people, make friends. I still reach out to some of them as freelancers to this day. Like, hey, we don't do this. Can you do it? To your point, we're like losing that. And I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to tell because I'm getting older too, and I'm also just attending that stuff less. So it's hard for me to take myself out of it. But I think that, yeah, I mean, there's the big macro trends about Gen Z going out less and all that, and maybe like Gen Z is just not going into. Well, one thing I did here to back up a little bit, this was from Carl Smith, who runs the Bureau, a big agency group. He was on our show a while back, and he was talking about how like there's the Gen Zers that are starting agencies are not calling them agencies as much. So it's like that demographic, maybe less, is going into what we would call an agency nowadays. So there's a little bit of that going on. Yeah, I guess with that, I'd also just love to learn like, what are you excited about over the next few months? Like what are you working on, within the agency, and how's that all playing out? Yeah. In terms of what could be AI, could be something else.
Yeah, so the AI always has tentacles in everything that we do anymore. Net new in the agency. We built some really cool things. I think a traditional digital agency, which we're kind of moving away from the moniker digital agency. We've added PR and communications recently through an acquisition, which that's also a strategy that we see the importance of AI. Kind of valuing mentions in the news, PR type things. It was strategic. So that's net new. Learning more about that, learning more about how to sell that even is exciting. Building our sales teams and structures and movements. I think we've been a little bit more deliberate this year about that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that, kind of plays out in the future. I don't know. Like I told my girlfriend, I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for another year.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I'm going to back up a little bit because you reminded me of another question I wanted to ask you earlier. So I think there's a lot of people listening, maybe a lot of owners that are like, I wish I had a John. I wish I had like a business person to do this for me. And it sounds like it's worked. You've been there 6 years. It sounds like things are going well. What were some of those systems that were in place already that were able to make you successful? Or what were some of those early learnings or things you guys had to build to make this work with you in that seat?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer that for number one, an owner that wants to hire someone, and also a young person that probably wants to maybe get into business development in an agency or even just into an agency in general. I think the first thing I'll say is once you get in, you know, learn and sit in every meeting that you can. I think that's how I was able to kind of craft the skills, is by sitting with a seasoned agency owner in a sales meeting, not once, not twice, dozens and dozens and dozens of times, but make sure you're listening, not just to the questions being asked, but listen to the responses. You almost have to play the game in your head of what would I ask next, or what's the next thing that I would say in response to that. And as you do that, before you know it, you're having the conversation at will. When I came over to Chris's, obviously there was some challenges there, right? I knew core marketing and conversational things. I did not know digital. I talking CMS, talking about things, that was Sputnik to me. So again, just shy of 30 years old, I was stressing a little bit about how effective can I learn this and how fast can I learn it. But again, as an agency owner, making sure you give someone the time to be successful. It's not a 3-month or 6-month window before they're bringing in $30K a month. It takes 6, 9 months, maybe even a year, 3 years to be effective. Give those people the resources and time to have the right conversations, and they will. The other side of it too is I think it's a roller coaster. Like business, you're gonna have good months, bad months. In sales, you're only as good as your last month. But have I had months where I'm like, man, I'm in a drought, I can't close stuff? Yes, it happens. You get back on the horse and things happen and you have a great month or a great year. Ride the wave. It's got to make sense business wise, but do the right motions, spend time in the right places, and usually it works out.
Yeah, I really like that. And like, I think a lot of the times we'll see the owners shuffle through people too quickly because they weren't supported. And it's sort of like the situation where maybe they're taking some template from some other industry that, is more down market, or even if it's not that, it's like they're expecting the same exact numbers and success that the owner might have gotten. And I think that there's pros and cons to getting the owner out of the seat. I guess like to make this maybe a little more tactical, what's the sort of like division of duties between marketing and sales in the agency? Like, how much prospecting are you expected to do versus the inbound, and like how is that sort of being set up, if that's something you're open to sharing?
Yeah, that's inbounds for sure. So when I started with Vendillii, we were seeing a lot of success with inbound lead generation, to the point where that was pretty much keeping me busy. Through some waves, obviously, like COVID or, just changes in general, AI coming into play, we've seen that even kind of slow down. So that changes the game, right? What are you going to do with the extra time now that's back into your day? That's where we're, to your point, you're choosing like the higher percentage opportunities and movements that get you closer to what you're doing. So if that is me reaching out to existing clients, like to your point, and asking for a referral, or just checking in to say, are you happy? What can we do better? Or there's a cross-sell, upsell opportunity. That's where you want to spend your time first. The net new generation, it's very, very hard to do. It's very hard to call someone up and catch them on a day where they're like, you know what? Yes, I want a new website. I want to redo all my digital marketing. It just doesn't happen. So look for ways to be, educating. That's another one. Knowledge. Putting together webinars, events where you just can share help versus sell. That's, again, shout out to HubSpot. Like, that methodology works. And the reason it works is because they don't feel as though you have skin in the game. You're just there to help them, educate them. And then once they have the knowledge, they'll think of you as a resource. And like, those guys were great. Those are just some of the things.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think that's probably what a lot of people need to hear. So John, with that, where can people go to learn more about you and Vendillii and so on?
Yeah, so I would say check out vendillii.com. We're an ever-changing agency. We are growing our service offerings. I think we do a really great job of understanding what's going to benefit the client. That's how we really try to make decisions. We have a team of great people. I think that's another thing that anyone that's running an agency, just make sure you have good people. And we even try to make sure our clients are good people, which they are. If you do that, you're going to enjoy work a lot more. see more success, and it's a lot more fun for everyone. Yeah, to learn about myself, you don't want to learn about me, but you can find me on LinkedIn too. I'm making a point this year. We're going to have some more content out there, similar to this. Dan, maybe we can have you back for maybe a roundtable or a webinar ourselves. So
Yeah, I'd love that, man. That'd be great. And that's what, more agencies should be doing. So it was great to hear your perspective, John, and hopefully we'll do a roundtable for long.
yeah, absolutely, Dan. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And yeah, if anyone has questions, just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Take care.